You take projects for the money, therefore your portfolio becomes the work that you took because of the money, not because of what you want to do. And then because your portfolio is made of projects that you don't want to do, that's what you get more work for. So it's this vicious cycle. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Creative Journal Podcast. I'm super excited to have this episode because I was thinking I'm kind of in a chapter of my life right now where I'm down to do my first Q&A style episode. And if you guys haven't noticed, the way we've structured the show so far is we've kind of gone on 1 week, off another week with one episode of guests and one episode kind of solo, my personal experience. So I want to really get intimate and, I have a field of questions that I've gathered from listeners from the audience, and I just want to go through and answer one by one. A lot of them are going to be around creativity and design trends in the industry, and other questions are going to be more personal to my experience, my business and design, and how I've really just approached graphic design and branding and web design through the lens of a young entrepreneur, and the things I'm doing, the tools I'm using, and I might get a little bit transparent in this episode as well. So stay tuned for that. So without further ado, thank you for listening to the Creative Journal Podcast. This is entry number 34. Yeah, it's been crazy. We're keeping the show going. If you guys are enjoying the episodes, please leave a like, a review on Spotify, whichever platform you're listening to. That does so much for the show. You guys have no idea. But yeah, we've gotten several reviews now. If you want to be featured on an episode, leave a review and I will read that as well. If you want to get in touch with me to just say hello, or if you have any design or business needs or anything like that, I love talking to people. That's one of the reasons why I started the show in the first place. So you can email me at andy@mmgdesign.net, or you can schedule a call. If you want to have a Zoom call and see my pretty face, I'd love to see yours as well. No strings attached, obviously. Just love to make connections, and I love to chat design too, if you can't tell. So without further ado, this is the Creative Journal Podcast. Let's get right in. So our first question is a personal question, and it is, what are some things you have gotten excited about that are coming down the pipeline in your business, in your career, etc.? Would love to hear how you are doing. Thank you. So some things that some things that I'm excited about moving forwards are, the business has been transitioning more into web design, and I'm very excited to pursue this because it is something I enjoy a lot recently. It's something that I think is a much more sustainable model from the approach of a creative business than almost anything else that's out there. If you can, and that's one of the biggest lessons that we were running throughout the show, is that as I document my journey, as I make a business out of creativity, and I share everything that I'm doing. I think web design is web prototyping, some kind of design that a business can come back to over and over, still implements those parts of creativity that can really enjoy, that you enjoy doing as a creative, and can also pay you the most money. I think that's kind of the middle of the Venn diagram we're all looking for, is that ideal sweet spot. If you can find a method of creativity that you enjoy doing and that services others, most importantly, is in demand, and that you can come back to day after day, week after week, year after year without feeling any kind of, you'll feel burnout regardless, but if you can come back to it over and over again, then, and you're getting paid for it, like I said, then there's really no downside. So some things that I'm excited about coming down the pipeline, we've launched a couple bigger projects recently. I've taken on a partner for my biggest ever web design project. I was kind of debating how much I could share because they're both sort of government projects for the areas in which I live. One of them is for economic development, and another one is for tourism. By far, the two biggest projects I've ever done in my career, and they both kind of came to a head at the same time. Um, and I've said this a lot recently, is I'm kind of just failing my way forward, but that's why we have the show, is to kind of document the journey. And when it comes to landing big projects, you can't really predict or forecast when they're going to come in your business, but you have to take them in stride, prioritize, and know that you can only act within the framework of the decisions you have in the moment. So I've had to tell myself that a lot recently. I mean, I've I've made peace with a lot of things that have come outside of my control, and for the first time, I've had to make peace with turning down projects too. By nature of going full time on the design business, which I have done for almost 2 months now, coming in April. I thought about maybe doing an episode where we talk about financials, which I've done before, but not as transparently as I would like to get. Um, what's a realistic expectation for freelance design for creative business, and what can someone my age? I'm just turned 20. I turned 22. I'll be 23 here soon. But what can you expect to make in that? And being real with yourself too. Like I work a lot, and I'm okay with working a lot, but there's also there's a trade off, and there's a lot of other things in my life I want to prioritize too. But from a financial standpoint, what does success look like for me is what I'm trying to figure out, and how can I make my business support that moving forwards? Because I'm going to be in it for the long term, and I know that now. So how can I set up the systems and the processes? And when it comes to things I'm excited about, that is what I'm excited about. Is optimizing my processes, bringing on team members, being on board. That's another thing I'm excited about too. I'm working with a partner for the first time who is awesome, and she is very well versed in a creative industry. She's a freelancer. She's been doing this a lot longer than I have, and she has helped me a lot. Um, Corey Bott is her name. I met her in Marysville, and she has played a huge role in helping me land some projects that I probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And that's a big thing when you're first starting a creative business, is finding a way to kind of get your foot in the door and continually proving yourself and earning the next project. So to sum up, those are the two things that I am very excited about: is creating the business that I want to create moving forwards, and also working with team members, onboarding people, and having a shared connection in the creative industry. And um, yeah, those are two things I'm really excited for. So it's a really good question. Number two. So we have 11 questions on the agenda, but I'm just going to kind of go one at a time, and until we go out of gas, until we run out of gas, because that's how we do it here. So um, will I get through all 11? I don't know, but we're going to find out. But yeah, you know what? I'm gonna say right now, we're gonna get through all 11. I'm gonna push through it no matter how tired I am. It's 9 o'clock right now. It's not that late, but I'm feeling really good, and I'm excited to get through these because we have some really good questions. So, number two. Oh boy, what are some mistakes you have made in your business or in design recently, and what have you learned from them? So, another personal one. This is a really good question. So, about a month ago, I signed my biggest ever branding project. 4-figure deposit. It was one of the biggest projects I had ever gotten to date. And me and the stakeholder of this project got along very well. We had a phone call connection, a Zoom call, and it wasn't even a prospect call. I had just reached out to her to learn about her business. It was more of a networking call, and the idea of her branding came up, and we started this project, and it was something that I was excited to start, and it's something I learned a lot of lessons from. So kind of backtracking, we signed on this project. I got to work right away, signed off right away. It was the most I'd ever invoiced, so it was kind of that tingly, scary moment when after you send it, you're waiting on a response. I had all the feels for this one, but long story short, the project did not go how I had hoped. I was very over ambitious, and I think I took on I did not set expectations from the beginning, which is very important to do. And I got humiliated a little bit because I stepped outside of my comfort zone. It was an industry I had never worked in before. I'd never done branding in before. And I set the expectation that I could deliver on a very custom brand for an audience that I had never familiarized myself with. And I spent a lot of time doing research, doing all the necessary steps that I do in my branding process. We had a lot of calls, and just none of the concepts were landing. And I had so many moments throughout this project. The project ended up lasting about 3 weeks until we finally, split ties, and I refunded 100%, which is another topic that we can talk about. But I felt that I couldn't take money for this project if I hadn't delivered the intended result that I promised. And I think that is the right way to do business. But because I do take responsibility for a lot of it, because I was not able to deliver on her brand. And regardless of, I know there's two sides to every story, but I think accountability is always the most positive route to take whenever there's a situation of conflict. Whether it's, ending a job, whether it's you did something that you're not proud of, accountability is always the best possible situation that you can default to, because it puts you in control. You can control how you respond to, a bad client interaction, a bad customer experience. You can, and if you take accountability, then you can use that to, improve that in the future. So looking back on it, my mistakes were that I didn't set expectations. I took on a project that I was not comfortable with because of financial reasons. And even though me and this person got along great and we still do, we're on good terms, I don't want that to happen again. So moving forwards, I want to focus on making the customer experience for my clients as good as I possibly can. And it forced me to evaluate, what does that look like? It looks like maybe after the branding call, I send them the questionnaire right away so that they really feel taken care of. They're like, oh man, Andy is on top of things. Maybe it looks like sending maybe it looks like having open access to me to book calls for, clarity calls for directions and branding. And maybe it looks like none of that. Maybe it looks like easing off the gas and coming off more conservative and being able to position yourself as a professional without constantly checking in on their approval. And I think that was another thing I learned as well, is that you have to position yourself as the expert and have faith that you're delivering the branding problem they're looking for. If you present concepts to a client and none of them are landing, it's probably because looking for you're not looking for feedback necessarily. You're looking for them to pick it apart, and they will, because they feel the pressure that, that's their obligation. So you have to pose your design, your creative solution as the one for them, and then justify it. And I did not justify my decisions. And that's something that I learned a lot from. And that's something that I will use going forward, because I don't plan on making this mistake again. But it was a lot, it was very valuable. So that was a really good question and good timing there. Okay, number 3. What do you do if your business is struggling financially and you don't feel as if people get value from your service? That is a good one. That's a really good one. I might say that about all of these, but that is a good one. So, what do you do if your business is struggling financially? That's something that we deal with a lot, especially as creatives. And I think you have to really curate in a creative business who you want to work for. And that should be, whether or not, regardless of industry, regardless of profession, it should be people that value design and they value your skill set. If you're doing design for people that don't value it, A, they're not going to pay. They're going to be stingy about price. B, they're always going to be checking up on you. They're always going to be offering feedback. They're always going to be giving the dreaded suggestions like, make the logo bigger or stuff like this. Definitely never heard that one before. Never heard that one. But you have to be conscious of the people that you bring in through your pipeline and have the humility and the confidence to say that you don't have to take on a project if you feel like this person doesn't value what you do. And I'm living vicariously as I say this, because I see this in myself too. I think a lot of us go through our careers, especially in creative business, creative entrepreneurship, with the fact that the mindset of the scarcity mindset, meaning that you're only going to get so many projects, you're only going to get so many opportunities, that you really have to capitalize on each one that you get and try and monetize it somehow. And even if it's not perfect, you have to accept it. But the reality is that you should have a high standard for the projects you take on. These people are lucky to work with me. These clients are lucky that they found me instead of going to Fiverr or somewhere else and getting something done that is not going to meet their needs, is not going to be consistent when it comes to their branding. And there's nothing wrong with Fiverr. Or Upwork or any of these other platforms or 99 Designs or Dear Designer or anything like this that offers design at a very low price point because there's a market for that. And for some people, that's right for them. And people shouldn't put off having a business because they can't afford a logo. Um, but you have to position your creative business as either as what you want it to be. And that comes with self-reflection, that comes with knowing the projects that you like to do, and that comes with the confidence and having done it before that you can deliver. And as we talked about in the last question, something I hadn't done, but if your business is struggling financially, it can kind of lead to a rough cycle because you end up taking on projects that you might not otherwise take on because of the money. And that's something that I just talked about is what I've done. Um, if your business is struggling financially, it becomes easier to take on projects that are outside of your skill set, outside of your comfort zone, and it leads to a situation where you are doing things that you aren't comfortable with for the money. You're not loving the craft as much. It becomes stressful. There's always this kind of underlying anxiety and I think as a business owner in general, there's always kind of this underlying anxiety because you don't have the steady paycheck and so forth. But you have to detach from the money, and that's so hard to do. But if you have faith in your skill set and you love the craft and you learn to love it, because you're not going to love every part of it, then you can remove the pressure a little bit and just try and operate in your own zone of genius. And I know that's hard to do. And trust me, like I say, I lived through it. I'm living through it right now. But you have to value your service and you have to get it in front of the right people. And that's where this whole aspect of marketing and trying creative things and design kind of comes to the forefront. But if you're struggling financially, these are some concrete things you can do. You can add different services. You can try new services. You can look inwards and try and reflect on your process and how you can streamline it. Like I kind of said, how can you make the customer experience as good as possible and make them want to come back? You can position your services so that they're more recurring, create more of a stable revenue model so that you can afford to take on more risky one-off projects in the future. Um, and you're not boxed into a situation where you have to take on projects just for the money because that's really the enemy of doing productive creative work. And at least you adding work to your portfolio when you're taking on projects that you don't want to do just for the money, at least to your portfolio being more of these projects. And this is what portfolio creep is you take projects for the money, therefore your portfolio becomes the work that you took because of the money, not because of the work you want to do. And then because your portfolio is made up of projects that you don't want to do, that's what you get more work for. So it's this vicious cycle. And trying to get ahead of that is a big thing. So even though you're struggling financially, it's still important to do passion projects, still important to have something outside of office hours that you can do to build your portfolio and hopefully market to clients that you want to work with and have the money to work with you and you get personal fulfillment out of working with. So that's my suggestion if you're struggling financially and you feel like your existing customer base doesn't appreciate you or get value from your service. Those are some concrete things that I would recommend. Okay, number 4. Here's some really good questions. You guys are killing it with these questions. So I'm going to keep plowing through. Number 4. With the rise of mobile, okay, this one's a bit more tactical, so we can kind of switch gears. With the rise of mobile browsing, how should businesses adapt their website design to cater to this trend effectively? That's a good question. So this is more into the UI UX sort of realm. Um, Businesses can cater their website design for more mobile friendliness, I'll say, by simplicity. And simplicity doesn't always mean just stripping back elements. It can also mean the effective placement of design elements for a mobile topic. So, for example, as you scale down on breakpoints, and if you're not a web designer, just take the principles for what they are. But as you scale down on breakpoints, you only have so much screen real estate, and it forces you to really prioritize what you want the end user to do. And there's an interesting concept in UI UX web design where you can actually work up breakpoints. So you start with the bare minimum, and it really forces you to prioritize what is important and what you want the user journey to be like. So your main thing might be a call to action, a brief summary overview of what you want the user to do, a strong hero image, and menus, stuff like this. But it forces you to kind of work backwards and think, okay, I'm on a 1080 by 1920 viewport, or a 10, yeah, yes, 1080 by 1920 viewport. What are the things that I can fit in this small area that will still communicate the most effectively and achieve the marketing, design, creative result that I want to achieve? And this is hard. So, over half of mobile browsing internet, over half of people that land on your website nowadays are going to be on a phone. So, the fact that some websites are not mobile friendly or responsive is just ridiculous. Like, and there's so many of them like this, but you just can't do that. You can't design with that. You can't build a successful creative business. You can't build a successful business at all if you don't have a mobile friendly design. People aren't going to, it makes you look unprofessional. It makes you look like you don't have attention to detail. It's inaccessible. It can, people aren't going to be able to find you. And I know when I see a website that I can't access on a phone, that speaks very badly to that company and their lack of professionalism. And I won't ever go and check. I won't ever try it again on the desktop just because it didn't work on mobile. That's not culturally acceptable. It's not acceptable at all. So to adapt your website to a more mobile friendly design, you really have to kind of step back and think practically about what are the most important elements. Usually they're the call to action. So focus on the customer journey, what you want that to feel like, and just test it. It's really easy nowadays with design softwares like Figma and Webflow that let you do the prototyping in app, and just have instant previews. So always kind of be comfortable detaching and looking back and thinking, okay, I am my customer. I am my own experience. I'm living my customer experience. What do I want to be feeling? What do I want the user flow to be like? And more often than not, it's a lot more simple and less bells and whistles than you think. That's why it's okay to remove elements as you scale down in breakpoint sizes. Okay, so number 5, how do you measure the ROI of good design, and what tools or metrics do you recommend? That's a very good question. You can measure the ROI of design in terms of there's a couple different metrics that you can use. Some are harder than others, some are more fact based and statistical. Excuse me. When people resonate with your branding, with your colors, with your logo, it's something that they will tell you. It's something that you can see in them. It's something that not a lot of companies have nowadays, to be frank. When people recognize your branding and they come back to it, there's a sense of familiarity there that you can't get, you just can't replicate. And that's this whole psychology of creativity and design, is that you have to somehow try and capture that genie in a bottle and give it to your clients. But it comes through research. It comes through knowing what some of these other brands are doing that achieves the same result. Like I said this to my friend Michael, was, what is this thing that Starbucks, that Nike, that, Apple, what do they have going on that, makes that brand so powerful? And it's, yes, some of it is longevity and repeated exposure to, familiar brand experiences, touch points, consistency, outcomes, and stuff like that. But it's just, there's something there that you want to go back to. And you can measure that ROI. I think you can measure the ROI of good design in your success of repeat business, and just based on what your customers, your partners, your listeners, your audience, what they're saying. That is very valuable. Is getting in touch with your audience and knowing what they think about your branding, your design, and so forth. In terms of metrics, a lot more of these can apply more so to websites and less so to design. But you can always run A/B tests. So, for example, on websites, you can test different colors, you can test different layouts, and just have a conscious metric of how many page views you get per your site. If you launch an update, there's certain softwares. I know Webflow has one that you can A/B test certain landing pages and really see what works for you, your clients, and your business, and take steps to do that. Make those changes, and change is hard. Um, One of the strongest forces in the world uh, is inertia and getting off of what you've already been doing, changing. This is why it's so hard for brands to commit to a redesign or anything that's outside of what they're used to. It's not just because of the investment; it's because it's a change, and they don't want to risk what is already changing, what is already comfortable with them, and that is human nature. So, doing what's uncomfortable, stepping out of your comfort zone in terms of branding, is one of the highest ROI things you can do, and it's reflected. Um, and the ROI of good branding is reflected in what your clients say about you and what your clients and if your clients come back to you, if there's a sense of familiarity there, if there's brand loyalty, and also through the more concrete metrics like page views, open rate, stuff like this that you can check through email, through on your website, and also just through, like I said, kind of just asking your customers. You can say, what color resonates more with you, what branding resonates more with you, what would make you feel more comfortable as a consumer. And you can do this to yourself too, like what brands do you interact the most with throughout the day, how do you feel, and try and capture that genie in a bottle and make it work for your own business, or hire someone that knows how to do that. Okay, six. Number six. Okay. Can you recommend some essential tools and resources for small businesses looking to improve their visual presence? Absolutely. So, if you're a small business and you want to increase your visibility, your recognizability, your visual presence, your overall brand identity, what are some tools you can do this? Okay, so if you're a small business, you probably have a pretty lean budget. So, what are some free or low use tools you can use to create a more visually appealing brand? First things that come to mind for me, by the way, I didn't script any answers to these. So, I really like this kind of off the cuff sort of response that I get when I'm staring into the camera and I think of responses on the go. But I think it's a really good useful exercise for coming up with these concepts and sharing them and fleshing them out live as we go through. So, low budget design tools for small businesses. First thing that comes to mind are Canva. Canva is great for social media posts. You can create templates. The free version of Canva is far you know far greater than anything that was ever available in the past. You can create a pretty consistent brand identity through Canva. Like, you can save your library of your brand colors, fonts, assets, and really, I mean, you have to do a little bit of work on the front end of knowing what good branding looks like, and so that when you stay consistent to it, it looks good. So you're not consistently putting out something that looks bad. But if you're a small business, getting on Canva, getting something consistent together, that's going to be the biggest key. Is not just having something that looks acceptable, but going back to it over and over again. Because if you keep changing up your colors, your typography, your fonts, your brand messaging, then people aren't going to know what they're coming back to. They're going to think it's, I mean, in your mind, it's a totally different business every time you see something that you don't recognize. So my advice would be to pick some colors, pick some type. You don't even need a logo necessarily, but have a memorable name. I would get a domain as soon as you can, and staying consistent with it, just sticking with it, even when you get bored. The consistency is what is going to bring people back and allow for that brand, this concept of branding, the genie in a bottle that people want to come back to. Another good free tool for small businesses looking to increase their visual presence would be Adobe Express. That's a good one too. Um, you can also, there's this thing called Vectorizer AI. If you want to take a crack at designing your own logo, you can turn it into a vector through a image trace software that's online. vectorizer.ai. You can also use this thing called Recraft, which is something that I have used a lot and I've made videos on in the past. An awesome little AI tool that allows you to use past images to generate consistent assets from the colors, the theme, the artistic style of inputs. So if you want to stay consistent through branding, then you can upload some of your past assets that you use, like stock images, so forth, like a color palette, and it'll generate some AI assets like icons, just some renderings of images. You can do an artistic style, like a manga style. You can pick from an illustration style. You can pick from a bunch of different ones and just have a play around with stuff that you feel like is consistent, and it's free as well. So tools like this were, like I said, the biggest tool for a small business would be to get something together that looks decent, sharp, or is consistent with your industry as well. You don't want to be a boutique beauty brand, have the strong, bold typeface that is very masculine and um, yeah. So you want to know the industry a little bit, know what your competitors are doing, and have something that toes the line of not being too out there and totally disregarding of all the brand, the laws of design and branding, but is also unique, recognizable, and sets you apart. A logo isn't meant to be, revolutionary or explain every little bit of it, or have all these incredible Easter eggs. That's not what a logo is for. A logo is just to create, a brand piece of like a brand, something that you can remember. It's not supposed to be something that explains your entire business model. And oftentimes, like I said, the simpler, the better. And that's good because if you're a small business, then you don't need something that's revolutionary to set yourself apart. You don't need a big, expensive rebrand with millions of dollars dumped into a marketing budget. You just need something that gets you started and is consistent. It's consistent. Biggest takeaway: start with something that looks decent and carry it through the lifetime of your project. And if it comes to a point where you can afford a designer, someone who has a better eye and knows the industry and has done the research on what good branding is for your business, for your industry, then that's something that they can work with is your existing branding and translating it into something that's more professional that will transfer into different mediums, whether it's website, print, typography, clothes, and get you a more official guidelines and so forth that matches where your business is at a financial level. So that's my recommendation. Okay, number 7. How do social media platforms influence the trends that you've seen in web design, and how can businesses ensure consistency across all their online presences? Okay, so I'm guessing that question means how does a brand create consistency throughout their presence online and on throughout online, meaning on social media and their website? That's a good question. So, softball pitch here. The question would be the first answer that comes to my head is colors and typography. So, if you have consistent colors and typography, now you can get into the rabbit hole of like the different ratios of like how often the color appears, primary, secondary. But if you have your exact, hex codes and fonts and you play with them consistently, and that's going to be 90% of the battle of, maintaining consistency across your social media and your website, but also in messaging too. And that's something that's really overlooked sort of in branding is that your your branding isn't just about your colors, your typography, your font, your logo. It's also in the things like messaging, your tone, the type of clients you work with, like whether or not you choose to swear in your messaging. If you're more laid back, if you're faceless, if you're customer facing, if you do video, if you do what kind of content you produce, all this stuff kind of ties into what your brand is. And that should be the title of this episode is that consistency is king when it comes to creating something in branding and creative business that people resonate with and want to come back to. But maintaining consistency across social media and your website, if you're a small business, a lot of that is in the visual elements. So if you're doing videos on social media, maybe you use the same font, you have maybe lower thirds animations of some kind that match your color theme. And also in your messaging as well. That would probably be the biggest thing. Because I'm thinking about it. If you're on social media, you're probably going to be doing a lot of video, a lot of actual talking content. So if you can maintain your consistency in how you speak, the types of things that you say to your clients, the people that watch your videos, the people that come across your Instagram, your Facebook, if you can write the copy in a similar way that's written to on your website, then you're going to come across as very genuine and consistent. And that's 90% of the battle right there. So that is how you transmit your branding across social media and your website. Number 8, what advice would you give to a business looking to rebrand or redesign their website for the first time? So usually when a company is looking to rebrand, then their efforts are usually, if they're looking to invest in something like this, usually it means that they're at a point in their business where they're making enough money to where they see that their visual identity is not on par with the type of business and the quality of business that they do. And this happened to me recently. One of my onboarded clients was in the construction industry. It's a great industry to work in because usually the people will trust you when it comes to they're great clients because they'll trust you when it comes to what good design is and how it looks and so forth. But when this usually happens a lot because people get started and they do the right thing. They get started and they don't let the visual branding hold them back. And before they know it, their business is accelerating, it's taking off. And then you look back at this logo and you think, man, this does not look professional. Like this might actually be hurting me at this point. And so that is very common in terms of when it comes to people recognizing this, and good on them. But at this point in their business are usually much more open to coming out and saying, okay, I need this redone. I need a professional. This is what the brand has looked up to this point. Maybe use this, this logo, this typography, this whatever we have been working with that we've cooked together, and create something that is on par with the business that I currently have and meets customers where they're at and has a little bit more research behind it, and is going to maybe help me be there and be with me for throughout the duration and lifespan of my business personally. Advice I would give to a brand looking to either rebrand or build a new website. If you're building a website for the first time with a designer or with an agency, I would come ready. Know the most important thing that they're going to look for from you is you are the business. You are someone. You have the passion. You have the knowledge. You have the industry. You know your customer, and that's what they're going to try and ask you. At least if they're a good designer, they're going to try and get inside the minds of your customer and be on the same team with you to accomplish the goals that you want your branding to accomplish. We want your branding to be something that works for you, and we want to be on the same team with you and create something that speaks to the clients. So come ready to communicate who your clients are and what they want to see, and come prepared and communicate well. Be quick to give feedback. Timeliness and response is always a big thing. And when it comes to websites, it never hurts to have, inspiration. It never hurts to be able to say, this is what I like. But I really love this website. I really love this logo. I love this typography. I love the way this makes me feel, and this is why. And when you do that, it's going to make it so much easier throughout the process because you have things to reference, and the research and knowing your customer is going to be the biggest part of communicating these results with whether it's a marketing agency or independent designer, whoever you're choosing to outsource your branding to. So that's the biggest thing, is to know your customers and be ready to communicate that with your partners. Number 9, what design tools and software are indispensable in MMG design, and would you recommend them and why? Okay, so I have a lot of tools that I've been using recently. I kind of touched on one already, is Recraft, and I could talk about this all day because I really nerd out on different tools and so forth. But a couple AI tools I've been using. One of them is Recraft. Another one is obviously ChatGPT. I've been writing some email scripts lately because I've been spending way too much time on email. So getting some scripts together that have helped me and that forefront has helped. I've dabbled in Notion AI a little bit too because my database in Notion is getting so expansive. Like still has my college notes, my high school notes, stuff like that. But everything's just getting so cluttered and bogged down. And I'll have moments where I'm just like, okay, I remember I wrote something about this a long time ago, but I'm yet to see it, and I don't remember where it's at. It's embedded somewhere in one of these pages. I have that moment a lot. So Notion AI, it's basically a search database of your existing brain, which is pretty nice for me, especially if any of you use Notion. First of all, comment below. You're among friends. Um, and if you use ClickUp or Asana or anything like that, then um, you can just stop listening because we're not friends. But no, I'm just kidding. But the Notion AI is cool. I think there's a lot of innovation that can come from it. Notion Calendar, I love. First of all, something I've tried recently in Notion Calendar, super interesting. I might make a video about this. Is that you can my nightly routine is that I'll set the calendar for the next day, and I've been consciously trying to make sure I spend more time on the business and not in the business. So not doing so much design tasks, but doing more so outreach and sending emails and stuff like this, trying to create partnerships that will play and move bigger chess pieces. So in Notion Calendar, I've been setting aside a block of time and then generating a page out of that block of time that'll then go to my main dashboard. And on my main dashboard, then I can just fill a page with a checklist of what I want to do that is on the business or in the business. And I have a template from that page that gets generated in that dashboard that, has tasks that I need to do that are on the business and in the business. So I think that's pretty cool. So Notion AI, Notion Calendar, Moxie is how I, take care of my invoicing, accounting, time tracking, all this stuff. My creative tools, I talk about Moxie a lot. I highly recommend them. Super great for creating templates. You can make really nice invoices that you can customize, and they have tokens. So if you want to create a template, it's all digital too. So you can have an invoice with a super fancy contract, proposal, deliverables, timeline, all this thing that can, and also like a payment portal where they can put in the credit card, connects with your Stripe, and also signing capabilities, so you can go straight from quote to proposal to contract to getting your money, which is really nice. So I do definitely recommend Moxie a lot. Another thing, obviously Notion. I use that for my social media calendar. Um, I've been using some new SEO tools lately because I've been dabbling a bit in SEO. Trello tool. Trello 2 is a very good one. I use that to manage my subscription clients. So basically, if you don't know what Trello is, it's basically a sticky note board, one to the next, to do, doing, done. And another cool thing is that they have power ups that you can add to your Trello board, like Google Drive, and there's a timer one too, and also setting limits on each category. So if you don't want more than one category in each section at a time, then you set a limit, and the client won't be able to drag 10 tasks into your designing category, um, because that is impossible. So that's a very high use. Trello is a very good one. Some SEO tools. I've been using Google Lighthouse a little bit lately. Shout out to my man Sam Sarston, getting me introduced to that. SEO is a great add-on to your business, not just for even if it's something you don't enjoy, which I enjoy a little bit because I like to be diverse and my day. So I actually made a whole Notion template on SEO checklist that, based on Sam's video, that I might even give that out to you guys if you want to duplicate it. But it's just basically a bunch of tests that I would run. So Google Search Console and Ahrefs, sorry, and mobile friendliness test, Google Lighthouse to score, image size, and a little bit of tests that you can run for conversion. So like things like buttons and analyzing the hierarchy of headings and subtitles and stuff like this, and a couple things with loading speed tests that you can run. So those are some good tools that I've used. I'm trying to think on the spot what else design wise. Creative wise, mostly just I've been dabbling. I really want to dabble in Framer a bit more. Framer is really exciting to me because I love Figma and I currently use Webflow, but Framer is a really exciting tool and I'm excited to try it. I'm going to set aside, geez, I don't have a ton of time, but I'm going to set aside a good couple hours one of these days to just dive into Framer and just do a sample project and see if it's something I can implement in my business. Because I've heard nothing but good things from the Flux Academy community and all these professional web designers. And um, I think for me, who doesn't have a background in code, that would be a very high use of my time. Is being able to go straight from design to development, basically right away, would be very helpful. So Framer, obviously Webflow. I love Webflow. Using that for all my websites. The two government websites we're building currently are on Webflow, which is a bit different for government websites, but I mean, hey, they trust me, so we're gonna deliver. But that was weird. But yeah, we're gonna we're gonna build those sites on Webflow, and I love Webflow. So I don't think I would become a trader or anything by switching over to Framer, or even just trying Framer, cheating on Lady Webflow. But yeah, those are the tools that's pretty much basically obviously Figma too. I mentioned so. Yeah, that's 99% of my day right there. If you want to branch into more kits like software, I have Apple 2021 M1 MacBook Pro, 14-inch. Love it. Best purchase I've ever made. I have Apple mouse. It's a battery operated kind, so it's not that dumbass feature where you have to charge it and you can't use it at the same time. So I lucked out there. Yeah, that's basically what I travel with every day. I have a SSD. I use a Samsung Q. I can't remember the name of it. It's like Samsung T7 Shield SSD. Carry that everywhere. I also use Backblaze, which is another software system. I know I'm just listing off random tools right now, but we can leave these in the show notes. By the way, if you guys like this episode and you want to see the show notes, go to mmgdesign.net/podcast/ whatever entry this is. I forgot off the top of my head, but entry was 035, and you can check out the show notes and everything that I discussed with the links. And it also helps out the show by visiting the webpage, so I highly encourage that. Yeah, so those are the software and tools that are indispensable in my work right now. I sometimes have this delirious mindset in my head, like what would happen if my laptop died and just became unusable out of the box. I couldn't use it for a whole day. I don't know what I would do. So maybe investing in another laptop would be a good idea. I don't know anyone. Does anyone do that? What does anyone have that thought? Was like, what would I do if my laptop broke right now? That just triggers anxiety. I had a situation where my solid state drive broke and I lost a ton of memory and projects and interviews, and that was a very hard time in my life. That's why I have these Backblaze and uh, extra solid state drives, and I have everything in online storage as well. So 3 levels of storage. That's very important, and I've learned that lesson the hard way. So those are some of the tools I'm using. Okay, number 10 or number 11. Sorry, we're on the last one, boys. Wow, I never knew I could talk this long. I did actually know this, but 11. What are some key elements of design that can help a website stand out in a crowded market? Okay, good one to end on. So, when I think of good design that can help businesses stand apart, like I said, the trend nowadays is simplicity, but I also think of it as, just prioritization. So, you're prioritizing what's most effective and you're leveraging the design elements that accentuate that the best. So, when I think of websites that stand out, a lot of the times it's color, a lot of the times it's typography, a lot of the times it's spacing and micro interactions like sticky scroll. I Ever since I've transitioned the business mostly to web design, I notice these things a ton because I'm implementing them in some of my client projects. But just small little aspects of the design, and just the most important thing is that you're user friendly and that the information is easy to navigate, it's digestible, and it doesn't overwhelm the viewer. So if you have super complex animations, drop shadows, stuff like this, you're going to get a lot of bounces. If you have like inconsistent typography, if you have inconsistent, hierarchy in your distinguishment of different levels of type, so your H1s, H2s, those are really important. Um, Key elements of design on a website: color, typography, navigation, hierarchy, small interactions. Loading speed is a big one. Loading speed is not something you notice until it's bad, but you get a lot of bounce if the page load speed is bad. Another one I think too that's overlooked a lot is, just like I said, navigation. You'll find sometimes on websites it's a lot easier to go from page to page, and you kind of yourself naturally kind of flicking through pages, and before you know it, you've gone through the whole sitemap. Engineering a website in that way is difficult, and that's what people pay a lot of money for branding and development agencies that can create a website that leads from one page to the next, and they have this whole spider web of interconnectivity on a website that before you know it, your user is spending more time on your website, and as a result, they're more likely to purchase and they're getting more value out of your content because they're spending more time on the site. And if that's the whole goal of building a good website and having good design elements, is to get people to spend more time on your website, because that just increases the chance to become customers. So doing the simple things right is important, but also, having the small little things that speak to your brand and also speak to the customer as well is very important. So those are some key elements of design that can help a website stand out. So keep that in mind for future builds, is adding those small interactions and staying strong to the fundamentals of good type, good hierarchy, and making that work. So that's the last one. A lot of good questions today. I'm about out of gas. It's been almost an hour now. So I had a really good time riffing on those Q&A. Got a little bit transparent there at the beginning, but also, I think a little bit of value there in the conversational aspect, and also some tactical questions as well. So that's going to wrap it up for this one. This is entry 35 of the Creative Journal podcast. Thank you guys for listening. And we have some killer episodes coming up in the next few weeks. Some big guests, some new guests. But yeah, we're going to keep rolling. And comment below if there's anyone that you would want to see on the show coming up. Like I said, you can book a call via the show if you just want to connect. Email me at Andy@MMGDesign. And please, if you're listening, leave a like, rating, share the show, whatever platform you're listening to. That does more than you know. And I appreciate that. I would appreciate that so much. That would make me smile very big. And but yeah, I hope this show is helping you guys out. I'm loving filming, and I'm loving diving into the creative aspects of entrepreneurship and design. So yeah, we'll see you guys next week on the Creative Journal podcast. Have a good week. Be creative and be a little kinder than you should, and do something outside of your comfort zone. Peace out.